All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Great, wonderful, perfect? Yeah. Woo. Week 2. It looks like most of you got week 1 stuff done. Inspirational, lab, camera, make and model, what is it, website for your photo site, and about me. I believe those were the items. If you have yet to finish any of those, don't worry about it. Get them done quickly, as soon as you can. We will be starting this week in lesson 2, the basic structure for the class as far as how we're going to function in the class. The first part of it will be discussion on whatever topic is in that week. This week we're just doing an introduction to digital photography. We'll have a slideshow discussion. I'll stop periodically and show you some pictures. We'll look at them. Some terminology we'll look at tonight as well. When we're through, however long it takes, like 40, 50 slides, something like that. I think it's 58 slides. Whatever time that is that we're done, we'll go right into the assignment take home and let you leave and start working on it. Because remember, I talked about this last week. This is the one where you get to go out and take pictures of each other and get to know each other a little bit before you go home. So I'll give you a little time to do that. Now, some students in this session choose to stay on campus. You can drive somewhere if you want to, like Beefaroo or McDonald's or Wendy's. I don't care, wherever you choose to go. 3 or 4 of you, preferably. It can be more than that. But I want everybody pairing up with someone or more than someone's. All right? Make sense? So you kind of get to know each other a little bit. And, you know, since we only meet once a week, these lab times are really a good time to just do that, get to know each other. And, you know, kind of your background, why you're taking the class, other classes you're taking, things like that. Make sense? I believe I told you last week to bring your camera to class every session. If by chance, you know, you forget your camera, I will kick you out of the class immediately. No, just kidding. I just like to say that. I saw a really cool video of a professor that was talking about cell phone etiquette in the classroom, and it was a big, you know, one of those big lecture halls, like 300 students or something like that, and he was talking about cell phone etiquette in the classroom, keeping them, you know, on silent mode or turn it off. And a student about that time was texting. And in the video, he asked the student to please bring him his phone. He brought him his phone. He went behind the podium, got a sledgehammer, and smashed it on the floor, tore it apart, gave it back to the student. And it was just the camera, you know, panned the whole student audience. They were just like, oh, I can't believe this. And he went through, you know, this will teach you guys to bring a phone to class. And about 5 minutes later, he asked the student to come back up, and he says, this was a reenactment. This student volunteered to do this. And it was really good, you know, get the point across. I'm not that hard-nosed, by the way. But yeah, if you do have cell phones, please keep them on vibrate. If you do have an emergency call, I know if you have family, if you have kids at home, and you need to leave, do that to take a phone call. Doesn't bother me at all. Okay? So I thought I'd share that with you. I thought it was kind of funny. But the YouTube video, about 15 minutes into it, it looked really serious. The guy wasn't joking. And then just boom, just said, well, this was a reenactment just to kind of teach you guys not to bring cell phones to class. So it's kind of, they're kind of hanging like, yeah, it was a reenactment, but would you really do that? I won't do that. It was a dummy phone he said he got from, you know how you go to the phone stores, they have those dummy phones, those droids or whatever, iPhone or whatever, sitting up there for people to play with on the little string. That's what it was he had smashed. So, but anyway, we're going to be doing the class, in-class take-home assignment, which is basically, most of the labs are like that. I'll get you started on it and then let you go forth and begin taking photos, either here on campus or elsewhere. Tonight's no different. And so let's go ahead and get started if we could. We're going to talk tonight about introduction to digital photography. And what it's about, some terminologies involved with digital photography. We'll look at some terms, look at some pictures. So, first is the different types of cameras that are out there right now. Different types of cameras that are out there as far as for purchase, whether you be first time purchasing a camera or you've had one for a while. I believe I told you last week that regardless of what camera you have, keep that camera, or maybe you can borrow a camera from your family or friends until you buy one of your own. There's no sense in going out and buy a real expensive camera right now, because the first half of the semester you're just learning techniques and procedures that you can learn on any camera. Make sense? Now granted, there will be some settings we do talk about each week that your camera might not have, but you'll be able to understand what those settings are when you do get a camera that has that setting. So, the technology, the different types of terminologies here. DSLR, megapixels, image stabilization, dust reduction, live view, sensors, facial recognition. What does it all mean and why does it matter? There's three main classifications of cameras: point and shoot, prosumer, and then digital SLR. The point and shoot would be the on the low end as far as cost goes, but really they're getting better and better as far as quality than they used to be, say, 4 or 5 years ago. Prosumer is at mid-range, and then digital SLR is a type for digital photography for professional photographers alike. So newspapers, sports, just to name a few that do this for a career, do photography for a career. So point and shoot, commonly referred to as a consumer digital camera, represents about 90% of all digital cameras on the market. Typically very small, compact, and lightweight. They target a broad majority audience, very user-friendly. Image quality is improved drastically. With these cameras, you can print quality 8x10 very easily, up to 8x10 very easily, and even higher some of them. So, prosumer, not technically its own specification. It's a common term used to describe advanced point and shoot. Similar in shape and appearance to DSLR, typically have an extended zoom range between 8 and 12 times zoom, which you'll learn what that means this semester. Typically combines user-friendliness with a manual of a high-end DSLR. DSLR stands for single lens reflex, much larger sensors, which you'll learn what that is this semester, resulting in greater image quality, tend to favor manual control. That's why really I don't mind you not having a DSLR, because first starting photographer needs to learn the basic techniques of what a photo should look like, a good photo should look like, some of the makeup and composition of a photo, kind of getting an eye, kind of like I had you do for week 1 for photo inspiration, of what inspires you. Because if you're not inspired by a photo, you probably won't take good photos. Make sense? If photos don't inspire you at all, you probably aren't going to take good photos. Does that make sense? It's kind of like, you wouldn't want a doctor that's not inspired by what he does or she does. It's not, enthused by it. We've all known people in fields of whatever that aren't very inspired by what they do, and you wonder, why are they in this field? But some of you, or most of you, are probably from that poll we did last week, are actually taking this class to better yourself as a photographer, to take better family photos, friends, maybe take a wedding here and there of people you know, stuff like that, right? So I would say point and shoot to the mid-range, the prosumer, is perfect starting out. when I first started taking photos about 25 years ago, I did have a 35 millimeter film, but even before that, I had my grandfather gave me an old Brownie camera, which you might have heard of. It's just an old style camera that had like a negative in it. The film was actually 3 inches by 4 inches, the film itself, and so I learned how to convert into darkroom pictures. So I went from that to 35 millimeter. To when digital came out, I just started point and shoot, because when digital first came out, they're very expensive. The very first ones that came off the assembly line. And so had that point and shoot for about 4 or 5 years before I ever started getting into the DSLR area. So that kind of gives you a time range. If you're just starting to learn photography, I always tell students, give yourself at least a year learning on a point and shoot at the prosumer range, and I'll give you some examples of what those are as time goes on this semester. And then you can wait a year to kind of shop around to really get a nice DSLR if you want to. But again, you don't have to. You can wait. You can survive without one. Because a lot of prosumer levels actually have a lot of the same features that a DSLR does. The features that you would use anyway on a day in, day out basis. But DSLRs tend to favor manual control. They lack many automatic settings like a point and shoot does. They're much larger and heavier, and they have the ability to interchange lenses. That the lenses itself can be very expensive. I've got some lenses here and friends of mine that have lenses that into thousands of dollars just for a lens for a camera. So what is the real difference between a digital SLR and point and shoot? The short answer is image quality. Reason is a 6 megapixel DSLR can take a better picture than a 10 megapixel point and shoot. The reason for that is the image sensor. There is a digital sensor inside of your cameras from the point and shoot all the way up to DSLR that make the difference of quality. And that digital image is made of millions of tiny squares known as pixels, and essentially that image is recorded by tiny what's called micro lens pixels, which make up the camera's sensor. So generally what the part that's the most expensive in a DSLR is the actual sensor itself that's in there. That's the most expensive part. All pixels are not created equal. A digital sensor is essentially made up of millions of tiny micro lenses or pixels. Pixels are analog devices which record light and color data. Larger sensors contain larger pixels, which are much better at collecting the data. So you've got, for instance, in this example here, on this top one, a compact camera sensor, which would be like the point and shoot up through the prosumer level. And then here is the SLR sensor. So the sensor, you can see just by size alone, is much larger in circumference to a point and shoot and prosumer. But that's not to say that the prosumer and point and shoot do not have good enough quality for what most consumers use today, which are posting to Facebook. Very few print pictures anymore. It's mostly email, Facebook, Flickr like we're using in this class, and that's it, right? Grandma and grandpas use Facebook now to see grandbabies' pictures. I mean, when's the last time, I know my sister sends pictures in the mail to me, but she's about the only one, my youngest sister. Everyone else, Facebook. Even my mom, before she passed, when she took pictures, she would put them on Facebook. And so, prosumer level and the point and shoot are plenty good enough. So here we have a representation as far as the digital sensor size. Again, the larger the sensor, the more area it has for detail for those pixels. Because most students coming in think if a DSLR has, say, 20 megapixels and your prosumer or point and shoot has 20 megapixels, the same quality. And the megapixel have really nothing to do with it. I mean, it has a little bit to do with it. The most, telling part is the sensor within it. So we have a Canon EOS 10D 300D. That is the digital sensor size on that. And then look at a 35 millimeter film. That's the one I actually started taking pictures on. 35 millimeter film. It's quite a bit larger than the Canon. Let me go ahead and time this out here so it doesn't do that on us. So the digital cameras have come a long ways in quality, but they're still not there, and they're almost there, as a 35 millimeter film, which we had for years. Full frame versus compact size sensor. The full frame would represent a 35 millimeter camera. The middle would represent the highest end DSLR that most consumers can afford to purchase anyway. I'm talking about $500 and under. So 35 millimeters still, film-wise, is kind of the mark that they go for in digital. Megapixels determine the total size. These go into some terms here. Megapixel, the term megapixel, determine the total size or dimension of an image recorded by the camera. So if you have a 10 megapixel, it's 10 million pixels per inch. If you have an 8 megapixel, 8 million pixels per inch. The more megapixels do not always mean better pictures, I already mentioned. Digital image dimensions do not equal print dimensions. For example, full quality image from an 8 megapixel camera will produce a digital image, good printing digital image up to 9:14. Printing standards, though, say not to go beyond 8:10. So here's another representation of how many pixels your camera has and how big of a print it can print out. Most of you in here fall between the 10 and maybe 20 range that have a camera that brought one to class. Even the point and shoots start around 10 that you purchase the last couple of years. 8 maybe. But even an 8 megapixel can print a real nice, well, it looks like back. 10 megapixel can go up to 4:6, nice quality, good quality. And so again, most consumers like you guys, students, don't really print pictures anymore. When's the last time you guys printed pictures in here? Anybody? When is it? How many's printed pictures in the last year? Okay, what was the event you printed the pictures for? Can you mind me asking? What was the event? Okay, for a photography class. Okay, good. What was yours for? What was it again? Canvas paint? Okay. Who else raised their hand? What was yours for? What was it again? I'm sorry. Okay. And somebody else over here had their hand up? Yeah, what was yours for? Okay.
They didn't want digital for some reason.
Okay, that's fine. And what was yours? Design a flyer. Okay. So everybody in here, for the majority of you that raised your hand, wasn't for personal reasons, right? It was all for business, school, learning, art, whatever. So not personal. That's what the point I'm getting across, I guess. And so just keep that in mind, because we are in the digital age, even when it comes to photos. If you think about it, newspapers are closing down or filing bankruptcy because they're competing with online news. And so even the field reporters, news people, whether it be sports or politics or whatever, the photographers in these fields are posting their stuff online. And like I mentioned last week, the quality or the size of those images online are very small, okay? And can be taken with, easily taken, a high quality image can easily be taken with a prosumer camera. They don't even need a DSLR anymore. Don't even need it. And so we'll talk about reasons of, and that's one reason why you've seen DSLR prices plummet in the last 3 to 4 years, to where average consumer can actually think about and realistically go out and buy one within a $300 to $400 range, a really nice DSLR. Couldn't do that 5, 6 years ago. When they first hit, DSLRs were running $2,800, low end. And what's driven the price to go down? Not as much demand for them anymore, so the prices are going down so they can sell more. Okay, movement compensation refers to the camera's ability to correct movements by the user while taking a picture. Some of your cameras call this image stabilization, whether it be Sony, Kodak's got its own proprietary version of this. All of them do. And so it's very useful in low light and telephoto situations. It represents by different companies. Nikon, vibration reduction, Canon, image stabilization, Pentax, shake reduction, Sony, super shot, steady shot, so they're all different. Dust reduction, it's more of a problem in DSLRs due to constant changing of lenses. So up to prosumer, you don't never even worry about this. But once dust does get in a sensor, it's very difficult to remove. Dust reduction is essentially a mechanism which shakes the camera's sensor to free any clinging dust particles. Special anti-static coatings and filters may be used. Live view, this is when you take a picture and it gives you a real quick live view of what you've just taken on your LCD screen on your cameras. Most all cameras have these from point and shoot up. Shots can be composed even while holding the camera away from your face, and we'll talk about the positive and negatives of using live view this semester. Originally only a feature in point and shoots, but DSLRs all have live view now. All the new DSLRs have live view. Facial recognition. Your camera now can detect where the face is in the shot, from DSLRs all the way down to point and shoot now. Well, even your camera phones. Even your not high-end camera phones, any camera phone, pretty much. The last 2 years has facial recognition. A lot of them have facial recognition built into it. What it does is you'll see a little block kind of show up in the middle of your screen that says, okay, I recognize that as a face. Might be a green block, blue block, whatever it is your camera is set up to do. What it does is then adjust the face to have high quality, and everything else doesn't have high quality. Color and contrast are automatically adjusted to create pleasing skin tones. So probably one of the biggest reasons people take this class is this right here. Everybody wants to get a good shot. Everybody does. From my grandson that's 2.5, that grabs my phone and tries to take pictures, all the way up to grandma that's 99, right? We all want to take a good picture. And we've all taken terrible pictures before, right? Whether, the red eye, how many has people in your family or friends in your family, regardless of what lighting they're in, they always have red eye. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Everybody in the whole group, perfect. Red eye, right in the middle. My daughter's like that. She has red eye in every single picture. So we all want to get a good shot, whether it be lighting, position of camera, focus, and hopefully this semester you'll learn how to do that. And not only how to learn to do it, but how it works good for you. I will give you all different ways to do it, and then you'll choose which way you like. That make sense? Give you all different ways to do it. The techniques work the same whether you're with a point and shoot or a DSLR. It doesn't matter. That's when this class first started. It was exclusively DSLRs with like 4 students, and I opened it up to everybody, and it's been pretty much packed every semester since. Because the same techniques you can learn regardless if you have a DSLR or not. Because majority of students, my argument for that was, majority of students are using cameras for the web. They don't need a DSLR. And the techniques we're teaching, they can learn on most point and shoot and prosumer cameras. So while there's hundreds of factors, and probably more, that make a good photo, it's still a very relative term. Like for instance, the inspirational assignment I had you guys do. What's inspirational to you may not be inspirational to your neighbor. Does that make sense? How many hates scary movies? You can't watch them because you can't sleep if you watch them. Anybody? Besides me. I'm the only one. I'm the only wimp in the entire room. Okay. My kids love scary movies. My mom was a Stephen King fan my whole life. But, you know, the first scary movie I remember watching as a kid, we went to a drive-in to watch, what was it? Rosemary's Baby or something? I think that's what it was. And then the next one was the one where the girl has her head turned around. What's that one? Oh, yeah, The Exorcist. Oh, man, that Exorcist still, to this day, I cannot go buy a poster of that movie. It just scares me to death. But some people love, in fact, there's a new one out just now my daughter went to see, and she said, it scared me to death. She said, this movie scared me to death. It's whatever demon movie that's out right now. It's something demon in the title. I forgot what it is. The Devil Inside, thank you. I guess that is pretty scary. Even people that love scary movies say that's pretty. Anybody seen that movie? Was it pretty scary? I had a bad ending. Okay. Well, I won't see it anyway, so I won't judge what you just said because I'll never see it. But some people love. I had a student last semester that actually did theatrical makeup for films. You know, he started out doing it for Halloween, and then he got hired in plays and things like that. But anyway, I'll bring his portfolio down and you guys will see it in the next couple of weeks. Anyway, he did theatrical makeup to where it looks like, you know, gashes in the face and arm and the head, you know, axe and, you know, stitches in the chest with blood pouring. I mean, just really realistic type stuff. And there is a art form of that and picture form for that. But just because you think something or I think something is good or a great photo does not necessarily mean somebody else will. But that doesn't, what I want to tell you right now is what matters is the techniques you learn are all the same for everybody. That's technique. They've been for half a decade. Same techniques taught when I was in school. You'll learn them in this semester. Same techniques. But taste is totally different. I will not try to sway you on taste. I will try to influence you on looking at things differently and getting a different eye, getting an eye for good photo, compositionally. But as far as your taste goes, some of you are already slanted towards nature type photos, group picture of people, maybe horror type photos, theatrical art, sports. That's what inspires you. And I could tell by just reading the comments on the photos you guys posted, everybody in here is inspired by different types of photos. You'll keep that inspiration. The one thing you'll learn this semester is how to hone your skills to get that shot that fits your taste. Does that make sense? So that's what it is. And so you're not going to learn what I like, or I'm not going to try to sway you into what somebody else likes taste-wise, but you'll learn techniques that'll help you. So for our purposes, we'll refer to good in the sense of correct exposure, because that's mainly where photos go good or bad, is exposure, the word exposure. So a correct or good exposure occurs when you maintain as much detail as possible in both the very bright parts of the picture as well as the very dark parts or shadows of a picture. How much of a range you have, which you can capture, detail from light to dark is referred to as dynamic range. As you're about to see, there are many correct or good exposures. And there's 3 items on your camera, 3 settings that most cameras have, 1 or more of these, that influence the exposure of your image. Shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, these 3 areas. So the first one, shutter speed, refers to how long the shutter is open, exposing the image to light. How long the camera sees the picture. It's measured in seconds, milliseconds generally, from 30 to 1/8 thousandths of a second. So the longer shutter's open, the more the light's exposed, the picture's exposed to the actual sensor. That's one way exposure is affected. So a fast shutter speed, 600 and up, can be used to do what's called stop motion, which I actually had a student did their final project in stop motion photography last semester, which is pretty cool. So this is where a person jumps up in the air and you see no blurring whatsoever of their feet, their hands, pretty static. Same way on the left, the drops of water, the wakeboard, everything's stopped in motion. This is big now in theaters and media and film. The stop motion fighting, right? Where they stop the frame and they turn it, and that's everybody's into that. And everybody loves it. That's one technology I think pretty much everybody thinks that's cool. All right? And so shutter speed affects that. Also, slow shutter speed, 1/60th or slower, can be used to portray movement. My son was a cross-country runner in high school, and believe it or not, I used to be a cross-country runner before I moved to Rockford and gained about 80 pounds. But, we used to take pictures of him all the time, and he liked the blurry images like this. He thought it looked cool. He didn't like the stop-motion ones. Because this one, basically, you can see movement in the runners as they're running. Same way on the left, you can see the water movement in the water moving. It makes it look like they're actually moving. It gives movement to a 2D photo, basically. Okay? It gives movement to it without actually being 3D, just by slowing down the shutter speed. Here's another one of an overpass, bridge, tripod, camera sitting there. The shutter speed set at 5 seconds or slower can be used to, very cool type of artistic effects of whatever's seen. In this case, it's lights on a highway of the cars going up and down the highway. A photographer a few semesters ago we had visit. You guys know those? I think it's on 3951. The windmill farms. You've seen those, right? He set up a slow shutter camera on one of those farms, and he showed a picture of it. It was like a 12-hour delay. 12-hour. It went very slow, very slow, very slow. It took multiple pictures. Anyway, at the end of it, it just looked like a big blur, like a circle, kind of like the big lollipop with the circles in it. Kind of looked like that. It was so slow. And you've seen the shutter speed technology even in video, where you see on National Geographic a plant grow from a seed to a bud to a tree or a little sapling. Same type of thing. So it does have its place in photography, and you might really like that. You might really like that technique. Beware though, as your shutter speed decreases, your chances of getting a blurry image increases because your hands cannot hold it as steady as it needs to be. So the slower the shutter speed, the more steady the camera needs to be held. So I always tell students, that's why God made tripods. Okay? Is slow shutter speed, put it on a tripod. And tripods basically are very inexpensive. I don't actually require students to have a tripod because They have so many different types of tripods today that it's crazy. But you can pick a tripod up at Walmart for like 15 bucks, 20 bucks, pretty reasonable. But you don't have to have a tripod. You can set your camera on a static device at the top of the hood of a car, whatever. The one we saw of the lights of the cars on the highway the camera could have been set right on the edge of the bridge, whatever. So your camera does have to be held steady. The slower the speed of that shutter. Aperture is the next item that helps with exposure. The term aperture is basically defined as a hole or opening which allows light to come in. Shutter speed is about how long the shutter stays open to allow the picture to hit the sensor. Remember, the image to hit the sensor. Aperture deals with light. The shutter deals with just the time delay of how long or how short the picture hits the image sensor. This has to deal with light. So inside the camera lens is a set of blades. And when I used to take pictures with my Brownie camera, you could actually see these blades, and even with the 35 millimeter, you could see these blades real prominent inside the camera and how they functioned. And one of the things I've always wanted to do in teaching this class, and I've not been able to put it together, I haven't had time, but what I'd really love to do is have just a very short segment in the beginning of this class where you're learning the terminologies and things, where you also learn, well, the way I learn anyway, film, darkroom technology, and exposure of, making your own film basically, and going into a darkroom and understanding how all that works. It's just amazing seeing that, I think. You really learn a lot. Even though you never would pick up a 35 millimeter after that 6-week or 8-week class, you learn so much, I think. And so I'm pushing to put that somewhere in the curriculum. So even if you guys take this, I know you're taking the class this semester, we might be offering that in future semesters. And I'm going to try to do it as like an 8-week thing, just a real short kind of thing. It'll be kind of cool, I think. So believe it or not, in the basement of this building, you know where you might not know, but some of you might know where G29 is, in the bottom of this building. Adjacent to that room, catty corner, there is a room now used by the newspaper Voice, I think, here on campus. Anyway, that used to be a dark room here on campus. That used to be the RVC dark room to do all film production, or photo production and things of that nature. Has no windows in there. It's totally pitch. If you shut that door and the blinds are shut, the lights are off, it's pitch dark in there, which is perfect for a dark room. But aperture deals with the size or hole of that lets the light in from the camera. It's often referred to as f-stops. In fact, most of your cameras have the term f-stop when it comes to aperture. Most of yours does. Aperture is usually represented by the letter F dash and then a series of fractions, 1.8, 5.6. The smaller the fraction means the wider opening, and it's referred to as a larger value. So if you have a smaller number, it's a large aperture. If you have a larger number, it's a small aperture. So the wider the lens is open, the larger the aperture value, the more the light gets in, and you can then use faster shutter speed. So if you have a wider aperture, a larger aperture, you're generally also going to need to have a faster shutter speed. So here's some examples of different settings on a camera. Could be some settings on your camera. F2, F4, F8, F16. You'll notice the smaller the number, the larger the hole of light letting in. Some of your cameras, you'll learn when we go over the different settings one of these weeks here coming up, where I have you write down the settings on your camera. Some of yours have what's called an aperture mode. The aperture mode, if you put your camera in aperture mode, it automatically sets the shutter speed for you. If you put your camera in shutter mode, it automatically sets the aperture for you. So aperture mode is where you can manually manipulate your aperture number, and then it automatically sets that shutter to what it should be to work well with that aperture, and then vice versa with shutter mode. Next is depth of field, the third one. Within exposure. Aperture deals specifically, I'm sorry, aperture is the second one, within the depth of field because it allows much of your image to be in focus. A wide aperture or a small number will give a shallow depth of field and can be used to isolate a subject. An example of this would be, shallow depth of field would be, say I'm taking a picture of you and you're in a crowd of people and you're right in the front and I take this shallow depth of field image of you, you'll be in focus, everyone behind you will be blurred out. You've seen that before, right? In pictures, or maybe you've taken some yourself and you're like, well, that looks pretty cool. I like that. Well, that's called shallow depth of field. And it's a cool effect that all of your cameras will do from point and shoot all the way up, and you'll learn how to do that this semester. In fact, we have a whole week where we deal with that. So in this image on the left, you'll notice you've got some shallow depth of field. It's using an f-stop of 2.8. Again, it's a lower number, meaning it's wider opened. F-stop, wider open. More light coming in. Second one on the right, wide depth of field, higher f-stop, meaning less light hitting it. But notice how the one on the right's more flat. It's a flatter depth, where the one on the left is more dimensional. The term in the book and the term in photography class always use depth of field. I like to use the word dimension better. I think it brings more to it. Everybody's used to 3D movies now, and you see them and all that. So everybody knows what dimensions are, different dimensions. And so I like the word dimension because it gives more dimension, that left one, your shallow depth of field, than the right one does. The right one's just one dimension, whereas the left one more of a 3D dimension, kind of pushing that 3D realm. Then the third one, we went over shutter speed, then went over aperture, now ISO. ISO refers to the light sensitivity of the sensor. You've got high ISO on some of your cameras, low ISO, and that's it. But then some of your cameras will actually have numbers referred to ISO, from say 100 on up. But high ISO means basically the sensor will be more sensitive to light, meaning it will take less light to get the right exposure. Like in this room with fluorescence, terrible lighting. Terrible lighting. And so you're going to have a higher ISO in this room to battle against the bad lighting of a fluorescent room. Similar to film speed in 35 millimeter, which that's what you dealt with in 35 millimeter. You change film speed to get different ISO. So typically most of your cameras, your ISO range is going to be 100 to 1600, somewhere in that range. Newer cameras, digital cameras can go all the way up to 64,000 for an ISO. Using high ISO values does cause the sensor to produce much more heat, meaning grain. The book says noise, but grainy. If you can just think of the word grainy or gravelly kind of effect on a picture. And we've seen those before. And by the way, sometimes a grainy effect or a gravelly effect is what you might want on an image. If it's an artsy look of an image, an artsy feel of an image, say an example would be a person's just getting, a couple's getting married and they're in the distance maybe on a beach and the sun's setting in front of them and the photographer's here, they're out there, the sun's in front of them, and you want a picture, just a silhouette picture of them as the sun's going down, and you want more of a high ISO to give that grainy, kind of artsy look, kind of a texture look to that image. So in some cases, you want that. But just so you know, a higher ISO number does bring more heat and a more grainy noise effect to the image. Noise is similar to grainy, as I mentioned, can cause a loss of detail in the images. It's more visible in dark parts of an image and generally more noticeable when displayed on the screen than in print. And let me stop there for just a second. I'm going to circle it. Screen and print. This is real confusing when you first get started taking pictures and wanting to take good pictures. Just because a picture looks bad on your monitor does not mean it's going to look bad when you print it. Okay? There are such things as what's called calibration of monitors. But even the best calibrated monitor with color They call it color chrome monitor to match it with, say, Photoshop, with CMYK, which you'll learn what that is, or RGB, you'll learn what that is. Whatever your image is taken in and you've calibrated your monitor, it's still not going to be the quality, even as best calibrated monitor in the world, as quality as the print. Good quality as the print, okay? It's going to have a little degradation, in some cases more degradation, a lot of degradation on your monitor versus a print version, okay? So don't trust your monitor, whether it be on your LCD, on your camera, or your computer, to judge the quality. Now, you say, well, that doesn't really make sense, because what if I am only using this image for Facebook or my photo album, right? It's going to be judged by its look on the web or on a browser, right? That's where you will manipulate photos sometimes that are just web-enabled only, not good for print. If you were to print that web-enabled picture, it would look terrible. It would look generally whitewashed a lot of times, because you have to brighten it up just a little bit more than what you would need to print. Does that make sense? And so since most of you are going to be doing that, you're going to be taking photos for web-enabled delivery, you will be manipulating them in Photoshop and online tools that I'll show you how to use this semester for view purposes on monitors only. That's fine, okay? But don't use those same pictures that you've converted for print. I always keep my originals and then have my modified pictures, which as the weeks go on, I'll kind of show you how I organize my pictures to kind of help you organize yours. And then you can take what I've given you and kind of make it fit into your logic and how you want to do it. But I always have the original. Always keep the original. Now, has there been cases to where I've taken a picture and modified the original and not kept, after I modified the original, saved it and not had the original to go back to? Yes, I've done that before. We've all done that probably. Okay? It's kind of like I teach a lot of classes, and I'm not a English person, English major or English scholar, but I remember in college, the English professors would always tell us to, we need this revision and that revision. I need this, we need this rough draft, and then the second rough draft and the third rough draft and then the final draft. And you're thinking as a student, you're like, well, you can just do it once. What do I need all these drafts for? Doesn't make any sense. Well, I realized that the logic behind it is, because I was in editing for a while I was in college, I worked with an editor, which taught me this. Say you work on something for 8 hours today. You can put something as whatever, a picture, a paper, a poster, whatever you can think of. Just put something in that slot. You worked on it for 8 hours. At the end of the day, you regroup with whoever you're working with, and they say, I like this, but this whole area over here on the left side, I don't like it. And you didn't have the original to work from. You modified the original. You are working on the only copy. You have no revision. That's where revisioning comes in and the drafting comes in. So in photography, you're going to do the same thing. When you take your original photo, keep that original, and then you'll have multiple modifications. Does that make sense? That way you can always go back to the original. And so what I always tell students, and I told you guys this last week, to kind of get in the habit of it now, even though I don't print a lot of pictures now, and you guys don't either, I always burn the original immediately to a CD or DVD, immediately, within a day or two. Get it done. It's burned away, and you can use your PC at home, your Mac at home, or if you're like me, I think I might have suggested Walmart. I use that a lot, or Walgreens, or Woodman's does it too. You can just drop off your SD card, say, hey, put this on a CD. When you're done shopping, pick up the CD, done. It's like under $3, and you've got it. The original version, and you don't lose it. Because I have had pictures destroyed on SD cards, or SD cards go bad. Because if you notice, those SD compact flash type cards are not real durable and rugged. It doesn't take a lot to destroy them. And so because I know a lot of you are already starting to take more photos, right? Even though you've been only in this class a week, you've already started to take more photos in this last week than maybe you've taken, you know, in a long time. And this next week will even be more and more. So as the semester goes on, you're going to have a lot of photos you're going to take. I don't generally delete any photos once I've got my final version of everything. I take everything, good or bad, ugly, burn it to a DVD, CD, because I might like something. I might not like it today, but I might like it next month, possibly. So we'll talk more about that later. So, okay, continue on with ISO. Some cameras claim to have what's called digital image stabilization. This means that the camera will automatically increase the ISO as needed. I don't really trust this. I've not seen a real good example of this on any camera, even the best cameras. So I'll show you this semester how to do it manually. I like to do the ISO, manipulate the ISO as much as possible manually on your camera. And I'll show you how to do that. Fast shutter speed will reduce the likelihood of camera shake, but high ISO will also most likely result in a grainy image. So the fourth element is another term in the photography tool belt tonight, which is called white balance. White balance doesn't really affect your exposure, bless you, just the appearance of colors in your image. When people think white balance, they don't really think of colors. But white balance is what makes or breaks colors. If you think about it, if you were to try to draw a picture on a piece of black paper, wouldn't look too great with even the most vibrant colors that you could get. True white gives you the truest colors. And so having a good white spot in your image and in your camera, knowing where that white spot is, the white balance is, gives you the truest colors as a result. Does that make sense? Knowing where that white is in the image, and that's all what white balance is. Different light sources cast different colors, like fluorescent, you'll learn this semester, cast a different color than the old-fashioned tungsten light in your home that a lot of people don't even have anymore. Your car lights have a different light source color than, say, the light on a flashlight. So every different light has different colors. And you usually only notice it with your eye. You won't notice it with your eye generally. You won't see it, but it has a color hue that it brings. And you might have noticed on your camera, in the white balance area, it asks you what setting are you in white balance. What type of setting are you in? Do you have fluorescent light? Do you have tungsten light? Outdoors, indoor, where are you at? For automatic white balance. Because white balance essentially is the camera's compensating for the color cast that's in the room or outside to reproduce the correct colors. And you'll learn how to do that this semester. So white balance is a color cast of light referred to as a color temperature, and it's rated in degrees called Kelvin, the Kelvin degrees. It ranges from very cool to very warm, and you might have seen these terms on your camera already when you played with white balance. You've seen cool and warm. Most digital cameras have an automatic white balance. We will use automatic white balance this semester, but towards middle part of the semester and on, we'll be using manual white balance, which I like to use, and so I'll show you how to use it. So basic in-camera settings. Exposure modes, there's going to be several modes available, and there's different flavors of camera. I looked at your guys' list of make and models in here. Auto is going to generally be represented by the letter A on your camera, or simply a green square. True point and shoot are going to be default to auto. This one here just has a green square. AV or aperture allows you to choose the aperture value while the camera chooses your shutter speed to obtain correct exposure. TV or shutter priority allows you to choose a shutter speed while the camera chooses the correct aperture exposure. M or manual gives you complete control over all the shutter speed and aperture settings, both. Scene modes, some of your point and shoot, and well, most all your point and shoot and prosumer, and even some of your SLRs now have scene modes. Sunlight, cloudy, fireworks, just to name a few. Scene modes are basically fully automatic, designed for certain situations. They typically place emphasis on one or more settings based on typical situations and circumstances. Most digital cameras have very similar scene modes available. And I'm not against using scene modes at all, because there are times where I've used scene modes in a pinch and didn't have time to play with the settings and needed to take the shot. Because really, when it comes right down to it, getting the shot's the most important. It really is. Now, understanding the settings prior to taking the shot will help you be speedier in getting those settings as needed. Okay, you'll learn that, become more second nature the more you use your camera. And I want to stop there for just a second. You will learn the settings of your current camera that you have right now and how they work. But when you buy a new camera somewhere down the road, guess what? You're going to have to learn the settings on that camera and how they work. Because all cameras are totally different as far as, where the settings are found, how they're manipulated, how they're, saved. So, but the techniques that you learn will supersede any model of camera you ever have, okay? So scene modes, continuing, backlight's another one. This eliminates dark shadows when light is coming from behind a subject or when the subject's in the shade. The built-in flash automatically fires to fill in the shadows. Beach or snow, photographing beach, snow, sunlit areas, water scenes. Exposure and white balance are set to help prevent the scene from becoming whitewashed. You can use a tripod on this one because it has to have a longer timer for shutter generally. Fireworks, tripod for this one as well. Shutter speed and exposure are set for shooting fireworks at night. Landscape, wide scene photos. There's one of the assignments this semester where you'll be doing what's called a panoramic photo, where you'll go into a scene in Rockford or wherever you live, and you'll take multiple successions of images and then stitch them together using your camera. But there is an automatic one, most all your cameras have, which is called landscape mode, that automatically focuses distant objects. And then macro mode, you'll learn how to use this setting plus the manual way to do it, where you get up close and personal to an object, whether it be a flower, an insect, and be able to take a picture of that with the background of that object maybe being blurred out just a little bit. Showing you how to do that using a macro mode. Night portrait, taking photos of subjects in the night scene as built-in flash, generally tripod on this one, usually red eye reduction as well. Night scene, photograph night scenes, programmed to be very slow shutter speed, tripod on this. Anything that's night, you generally need a tripod because of the camera being hold steady. And then party scene, taking photos in a very well-lit room or dim lit room. Exposure and shutter speed are automatically adjusted. Captures indoor background lighting, candlelight. Hold the camera very steady when using this mode. Portrait, the main subject's in clear focus. Everything else is basically blurred. Sports, whether it be fast-moving subject, generally it's going to be a faster shutter speed to give you that freeze stop motion mode. Best when shots are taken in bright light, pre-focusing recommended. And then sunset, taking photos of sunsets and sunrises, help keep the deep hues of the scene. Metering mode. Some of your cameras are going to have metering modes available to them. Metering modes basically means within your camera, the metering mode just measures the amount of light in a frame and determines the very best exposure. Most of your metering mode buttons have a plus and minus on them. And you generally have a negative, neutral, and a positive. Like a -1, 0, +1. And you take all three per shot. and then you choose the best out of the three. This metering mode, some of you have what's called metering mode bracketing we'll go over, which you'll press the button down in this mode. It will take 3 pictures per shot. Usually, like I said, a -1, 0, +1, and these give you different exposures of that metering. You have center weight metering, which is right in the middle of the center of the camera. Exposure metering is averaged over the entire frame with emphasis placed right in the center, used for general and portrait photography. Matrix has the scene split up into a series of zones. Overall exposure is based on evaluating each zone individually and taking advantage of the total light. So a zone in this one actually might look like this. It might actually look like this on your metering mode for matrix. And then it sees that this portion of the picture is the area that has the most content, and so it'll focus on that metering section to focus in and give it the best quality. Spot metering, this is where you can basically determine where you want the scene, the spot to be in the scene. So this could be your LCD viewer, and you want it to be up here in the upper right corner. You can actually, in the spot metering, tell it where to go and where to focus that image on. Partial metering, basically this one is similar to spot metering, but it's a larger area. So instead of the little spot up in the corner like I mentioned here, it might be something like this, the corner of the image it takes. So next is actually the most crucial part. If you forget everything tonight, remember this. Remember this, forget everything else. This is the most important one, really. Rule of thirds. Because this whole first few weeks of class is just getting you an eye for photography and pictures and composition and everything. So rule of thirds has been around for a long time in photography. It's basically a term in photography to where you imagine the picture you're taking divided into 3 equal sections, horizontally and vertically, divided into thirds. So, the rule of thirds, you look at your image like this. In fact, some of your cameras actually have a grid that you can turn on that does this for you, and you can apply the rule of thirds. The concept is you place your subject in or elements along any of these lines, especially near the intersecting points, making the photo more naturally attractive to the viewer. Intersecting points would be these points here. Okay? And naturally, you think back when you were in kindergarten or first grade, right? The kindergarten or first grade teacher gave you a piece of paper and colors, and you're supposed to draw something. What is a natural human inclination initially, given a piece of paper and colors, to draw within the lines or to fill up the entire page with junk? Fill up the entire page, right? So when you take a picture, when you start taking pictures, most of us, when we first start taking pictures, a natural inclination is fill up the entire shot with stuff. You got to fill it all up. There should be no dead space, white space, everything's full. Got to have something in there. That's further away from the truth as it can be. You want to have something focused, a subject focus that you're taking a picture of, and then you focus that subject in one of those 4 quadrants of the image. The rule of thirds helps you with that. So, these 4 spots is where you're going to mainly focus the image. Not right in the middle, left or right, up, down. It's one of these 4 areas. Now, is it exact? No, it's just a rule to go by to help you when you're taking your photos. So, rule of thirds illustrated, we have here a sunset or a sky scene with a water scene and a little island with a tree in the middle. When you first see this image, where does your eye naturally go to first? When you first see this image, what object does it go to first? The tree, okay? And you'll notice where the tree's located, it's going to be located in one of those rule of thirds areas, roughly, which is going to be this one right here, that it's going to be centered at. Okay? Now, when we first start taking pictures, what might be our tendency, where would we place this tree initially when we first start taking pictures? Natural. Where would we naturally want to put it, you think? Right in the middle, right? Maybe, you think? Right in the middle? Not to the left or right, top or bottom, but man, right in the middle. We want to center it. And that's another thing you got to literally retrain your eyes to not want to do that. That's hopefully the next few weeks what you'll be doing, is learning how to train your eyes when you're taking your photos to make yourself think of this when you're taking your photos. Placement of where that object is in your photo using the rule of thirds. Another example here. That one. That one. Okay? So again, it can be upper left, lower, upper left, lower left, upper right, lower right, quadrant of the image. It's fine. Because it looks more structurally sound to be that way. It makes people that look at it more at ease with the photo. In fact, one of the photos, that I have always liked, is a beach scene of a couple running off to the right of the beach on the right side. Really nothing but the sea and the ocean, and they may be like right over in this area here running, and they're running actually off of the page, off of the picture, and it makes it look like, they're going somewhere, you don't know where they're going, but natural human tendency is to fill in what's not there. The imagination runs, okay? Same thing with your images. When you use a rule of thirds, it makes your imagination also be used, those that are viewing your images, more so than putting something right in the center, okay? So rule of thirds is very simple. You place the subject along one of the four quadrants or intersecting points. For portraits, the eyes are often positioned along one of the horizontal lines, preferably near one of the power points to take the photograph, making more pleasing to look at. For landscapes, the horizon is usually aligned any one of the horizontal lines, either the upper or lower one, because you'll learn this semester ways that you can take portraits or landscapes, proper ways between the land and sky. And rule of thirds helps in all those areas. Some of the image processing programs I suggest second week that you can already begin downloading in your house computer will be Picasa. It's totally free to download, okay? Distributed by Google, very simple to use. To manage your photos, it manages it by default by date, and then you can do minimal editing, like red eye, brightness, things of that nature. You can create web albums, post stuff to Facebook, Twitter, whatever. It's all built in. And so this is a great tool to download. The first, to get downloaded and start using if you don't have a image processing manager on your computer to kind of manage your photos. And this would be great to start with this week to kind of start playing with it. Most students that have never heard of it before and download and start using it really like it. Most students do. Because again, it's fairly easy to use, doesn't cost anything, and it does have a free updated editing software in there called Picnic. They just added here recently, the last 6 months, I believe. And again, a starter one I could recommend definitely for you. And there's other ones out there, but this is something fairly easy to use and good to start with. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and switch gears here. I want to go to the take-home and what you're going to be doing here. So, up the lights just a little bit. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Gotta wake up now. Oh, as far as grading goes, the way I grade in my classes, or I try to grade time-wise, is everything's due Sunday in this class, I believe, of each week, Sunday night, following week, the week you're in. I try to have everything graded for class, and most of my classes have things due on Sunday. I try to have everything graded as much as possible by the Tuesday of that when things pass, so the Tuesday after things are due. Does that make sense? I try to have everything graded. So if by chance you come to class on Tuesday, I still have yet to grade your stuff, just give me a little time to do that this first week, getting everybody acclimated, myself including. But I believe I got most of your stuff graded that was in here probably, by 5 o'clock tonight. And so if you still have stuff to submit from last week, just get it in before Sunday. That would be fine. So let me go ahead and go to web225 lessons week 2. And thanks for those that have used that. I've had a number of you use that online chat module, the Meebo, and it seems to be working pretty good. And I don't mind using it, and it seems to help students. And it's a free tool I've used for a number of years, and so I'm all for it. So anyway, let's go ahead and go to the take home. Okay, so what you're going to do with this one is you're going to learn each other's names. You're going to look at each other here in a second and go, oh yeah, you're in my group. Okay? Hope somebody around you, 2 or 3, 4 people. I'd say 4 at most would be good for your group. So before we go further in this, let's go ahead and do that now before I give you instructions. Because I find if I do the instructions first, you kind of miss the group thing. So let's do the group thing now. Go ahead and figure out who you're going to do this with right now. So look at each other, go, oh yeah, do you want to do this? I want everybody being in groups of 2 to 4 would be preferable. That would be great. Good. Everybody in a group. Everybody looked at each other, nodded, and said, yeah, you're my group. Good. Okay, so now you can have 5, but everybody in a group? Anybody not in a group? Okay, good. That was simple. Okay, now let's go over what you're going to be doing. You're going to practice at least 10 photos, okay, per person in your group. So if you have a group of 4, you're going to take 30 photos. 10 and 10. 10 of each person I'd like you to do, just for practice, okay? I want you to use auto mode only for this assignment. And focus on the rule of thirds while you're taking the pictures, okay? So to do the rule of thirds for this one, the subject's going to have to be back a little bit from your camera to get them in that rule of thirds shot. And remember, for portraits, taking a portrait using the rule of thirds scenario, the eyes of the individual generally rest upon the line here. Generally, it can actually be down here as well. Okay, does that make sense? So this would be general, not, exact, but general kind of guideline for you for taking somebody's picture. So I have to step back just a little bit to get in that type of frame. So most of you know this already, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you. For most of your cameras, I'd say 99.9% of them, when you press, in auto mode, when you press the button halfway down and hold it, it's going to autofocus in auto mode. So you'll get them where they need to be in your rule of thirds, right? Press the button halfway down, take 10 pictures per person. Let them decide which one they like, get their name from them, write it down, or put it on your cell phone or whatever. Because what you're going to do is, once they pick the photo that they like, you're going to name the photo their last name .jpeg when you finally get it to your computer at home. And then you're going to create a photo album on your set, on your photo site. Since most of you are using Flickr, we showed you last week how to create those sets. Originally I had it named Classmates. I'm going to change it to just week whatever, week 1, week 2, week 3, be simple, easier for you to do that. Last semester was a little confusing having different names for each set, so this will be a little bit more uniform. I think week 1, week 2 will work well, especially since Flickr lets us create sets, and so it'll be easier for you. So we'll create a week 1 set, And so if you have 4 people in your group, you're going to upload 1 picture per person. So if you have 4 people, it'll be 3 images, and it could be this right here. So it's just last name only. So we'll say Johnson's in your group, a Smith's in your group, and maybe a Jones is in your group. Most all of your images or all of your cameras, I'd say again 99.9% of them are going to save your images as a JPEG image anyway, but it's going to be a number generally that it saves it as. So when you bring it into your picture or into your computer at home, you'll name it properly, the one that they've chosen. And what you could do, you say, well, how do I remember which one they chose? When you take the 10 photos, let them choose the one that they like, delete all the other ones. Make sense? So you've just got one. If you do it in succession, like say, I'm going to do Johnson's is my first image, Smith's my second, and Jones is third, you'll have no problem remembering which one was which. But if you do have a problem remembering, how many has a camera on your phone? Anybody? Camera on your phone? Okay. You could take a picture with your regular camera, right, of the assignment, but then take a picture with your phone and message yourself with the name of that person in the image. You know how you can you can send yourself messages or emails or whatever. You can do that if you want to. Or you can do the old-fashioned write it down, however you want to do it. Different ways to do it. Okay, so any questions? Pretty easy, right? And so this will help you, very first assignment, on getting to know each other, others' names, taking photos, uploading that photo successfully to your Flickr account. And then what we'll do first thing next Tuesday is I'm going to come by one to see if you have any questions with your Flickr account on uploading that image. If by chance you do have image issues or uploading issues and you can't get it by next Tuesday, you can't figure it out or something's happened, don't freak out. Bring your camera to class with those images or put it on a USB thumb drive, bring it to class. I'll help you, first part of class, get that done. Make sense? Because I want to make sure that you successfully have created a set on Flickr, you know how to do it and upload it. That's kind of the second purpose for this assignment. It's not just to know each other, but also successfully upload your images. Because for some of you, this might be the very first time doing that. If you need help on doing what I just mentioned on Flickr, watch the podcast from last week, because towards the end, I believe is where I went over the Flickr setup, and you can rewatch that if you want to, and kind of pause it and go, okay, do this, pause it, do that. You can pause the podcast and watch it over and over again. All right? Questiones. You don't have to do this on campus. You can leave and go elsewhere, do it. But before you go home tonight, I want these photos taken. All right? Any questions? All right? Go forth and take photos. Have fun. Get to know each other. Yes? Yeah. Oh, the URL?
Yeah. I guess I should have watched some.
Oh, you can change it, because right now, let me see here. Let me see. This is your photo stream right now, but let me see here where it's at. Somewhere in here. Apps, no. Your account, your profile. Maybe that's it. Edit your screen name. Well, that's what you log in with, isn't it? Yeah, that's what you log in with. Photo streams there.
That is correct, though, right?
Yeah, it's definitely correct. For right now, well, I'm trying to think here. Your account, your profile. Let's go to your account, see if we can do it there. Okay, you got screen name, profile. Edit, see, searchable. Flickr. Okay, here we go. Create your memorable Flickr web address. That's where it's at. Oh. Yay! So let's put in your first full name, and then your last name. So full name first, full name last. See if it's available. It'll tell you. Is that good? Is that right?
Yeah.
Lock it in. So this is now. Oh, back. It's all right. Your account. I wonder if it lets us do it again. It might be set. Let's see. Nope, you're set. Oh well. That's it. That's going to be your. So Hulu, Laura. That's all right. That's all right. Don't worry about it. So go ahead, and that's going to be the URL you'll put in week 1 for the URL.
Okay.
So, makes sense? If you don't like that URL, by the way, because it looks like you can't change it, you can delete this account or close it and create another one.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Maybe do something like that. Yep. Be right there.
I need today's pin.
It's up on the board already. That 3W43Z7.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
But what I need to know is, did you get these of mine?
Well, all you need to know if is to check is actually click on About Me. It says it's checked. Yes, I got it. Got that. Got that. Got that. If it's checked, that means you did it.
Oh, okay, because I see that I don't have any grades.
Yep. Did you go up to the grade? Did you go up to your grade? Go to your course tab. Go over here and refresh the grade. Refresh it.
Here?
Right there. Yep. Just click on that. You have to click on it.
I did. Oh,
There we go.
I like that.
Yep. And then also too, if you click on About Me here, in fact, it should have a grade tab up there under, so I'll make sure that's up there for you. And go to, you can actually find your grades this way too. Click on Report.
Yeah.
Yeah, go there. I'll put a tab up here for you guys. It'd be easier too.
I am so impatient. I am computer impatient. I clicked on it.
It's loading.
Oh,
It's taking a long time.
okay.
Anyway, within this, it looks like you can get your grade port too. But yeah, I've got everything, and they've all been graded.
Oh, all right.
So you're good to go. You got 100% right now.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, the other question
Yep.
I have is, are you following the chapters?
No, we've not started on this book yet. Remember, I told you we don't start on that till week 4. Actually, we're using the book.
Oh, so we haven't even started it?
New. Now, some of the terms I've used already are in the book, but I'm not using the book as of yet.
So
I'm not getting into the book yet.
anything I've got highlighted isn't something that I have to remember.
Well, it's good to go over it. Some of these, correlate with what we've already went over tonight. It's an introduction, but I don't use a text really per se for the introduction for this week. So I'll tell you when we actually start using the book. You'll see it in the assignments,
Oh,
and I'll let you know about it. Okay?
okay.
Yes. Right there.